So, hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of In Conversation With. My name is John Lunn, aka Jonnychipz, and in this video series we talk all things cloud with experts and advocates from right across the industry, covering a wide range of topics, from skills and careers through to technical conversations, overviews and soft skills. So, whether you're watching this on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter or LinkedIn, thanks so much for tuning in. It really does mean a lot. Please do take part in the chat below. Drop us a like, a comment. Please do remember to hit that subscribe and hit that bell notification so you'll get notified next time we have some content that goes live. So, this week we are joined by a super knowledgeable guest who has assisted so many organizations to hit their compliance and regulatory compliance targets using Microsoft 365 governance and compliance features. He's a blogger, he's an M365 compliance international lead at Epic Global, and he's also recently taken the decision to become more public facing himself. Hence, he's here to share his knowledge with us. So it goes without saying, I'm super excited to welcome my next guest on In Conversation With as Mr. Ryan John Murphy. Hey Ryan, how you doing? Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Johnny. Nice to see you again.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I know we caught up a few weeks back, didn't we? And had a quick chat, but we thought, yeah, it'd be great to get you on the show and get you talking about some of these cool areas. But so, yeah, thanks for giving up your time, Ryan. But obviously, we're going to talk around the topic of security compliance, governance, that kind of stuff now within 365. But before we get into all of that, I don't know if you want to give yourself a little bit of an introduction, let us know how you got to the place that you're at the moment. That'd be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. So I'm Ryan John Murphy, as Johnny just alluded to. I've been working in Microsoft technology now for about 20 years. Predominantly before I started in compliance, I was working just around Exchange. So I was doing like HSM before Office 365, but Microsoft's like cloud solution, if you like, for ISPs and so on and so forth. And then I got an opportunity at a UK global bank. Whilst I was there doing Exchange migration into cloud, so configuring the hybrid and so on and so forth, there was an opportunity that arose due to waiting for, I think I was waiting for some kit to be arrived or something, Johnny. And I just thought, I have like 10, 14 days here where I'm just going to be doing pretty much nothing. So I spoke to the lead at that time and just said, is there anything else that needs attention from a 365 perspective? And he said, do you want to take a look at the compliance stuff? And I was like, yeah, didn't really know what that meant. So I just had a look in the old portal back then. There was no sensitivity labels or anything at that time. And I started looking through. And it was kind of like, you know what? This actually looks very interesting. Most of it I didn't understand initially, but I started reading. And the more I read, the more I wanted to know. And then the more I knew, the more I thought, this is actually my new purpose. So I'm going to concentrate on this, because I knew Exchange, going into Exchange Online, that particular product would eventually become non-existent for an Exchange consultant. You do get bits of work here and there, but since I took on the compliance solution stack, it's just been elevating all the time. And Microsoft have put a lot of effort in over the last 24, 36 months from a compliance perspective. So what I was looking at back then is a completely different solution stack to what we have today.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely cool. I mean, in terms of compliance and governance, I mean, it's one of those conversations that, most businesses have, and in my own experience, it's normally the larger the business, the more restricted probably isn't the right word, but the more regimented that they are against kind of industry standards and regulatory compliance standards. And generally speaking, the more on it. I mean, it's a big, scary topic to a lot of people, I think it's probably fair to say, in terms of regulatory compliance, industry standards, governance, they're all really large, perceivably large areas of knowledge that you kind of need. I mean, you mentioned there that you asked to kind of get stuck into some of the compliance features. Is that how you started? I mean, how quickly did it take you, and can you kind of navigate us through some of the, the quirks and the things that you need to know when it comes to compliance in 365?
Yeah, so predominantly my work has been in financial services. So you have to understand, let's say, Sec 17A regulation from an immutability perspective from the USA. Okay, so Security and Exchange Commission. And then you've got the SCA and you've got the PRA over here in the UK. Understanding what they mean from a technology standpoint rather from a theoretical standpoint of what the regulation is asking for, that's where that comes in from a technology perspective in the compliance center. So initially when I started off, I didn't know anything about these, nothing whatsoever. And my first thought was when the technical lead said, do you want to look into compliance? I was like, so if I get a configuration wrong here, I'm going to get sued. And he was like, oh, no, it's nothing around that deep dive. You know what I mean? The word compliance at that time was just a frightening word. But over the years, as it's developed, you've got now within Microsoft the 4 compliance solutions. You've got information protection, DLP. You've got insider risk communications compliance. You've got discover and respond, which is about advanced e-discoveries. So that's investigations and cases that you can do searches on. The solution itself has come on leaps and bounds over the last few years. So insider risk management is about analytics and threat. So it's that insider threat, so that's like theft by departing users. So you, more often than not, it's contractors. I hate to say that, being a contractor for 17 years, but you build out some designs and you think, oh, these are really good. Or you have some intellectual property from that business and think, this is really good. I'm going to take these to my next role with me, without actually knowing that it's data theft. You're actually taking data with you that doesn't belong to you, of course. Even though you've had some contribution to it, it still belongs to the business of where you are. But on top of that, the main focus I see is around protecting documents. So information protection, classification taxonomies, are labeling taxonomies, as Microsoft likes to call them. That's the first thing we would look at, looking at a client. So if you have a brand new client, they have really no journey into 365, or they're about to kick off a 365 project, you look for the classification taxonomy or the retention schedule or retention matrix, whatever terminology you want to use, which defines your governance. So that's essentially how long you need to keep items for under what regulation, whether it's GDPR or Sec 17A or whatever the case may be in any industry. And then you have the records items where you can mark documents as a record, so you can interact with them and upversion them and unlock them and lock them. And then you have a regulatory record, which is basically marking the item as immutable. So we usually see this in financial organizations where you have to prevent intertrading or whatever the case may be, or just because that is a specific contract and it needs to be marked as immutable because the regulator states it has to be immutable. That's where it's come from, and that's where we are today with it. I wish it was as easy as that 5 years ago, but Microsoft have put a lot of effort into compliance the last few years, and the future of it, I think, would be more automation, more machine learning. So if you have let's say a sensitive information type, or a document that contains financial services information like credit cards or even personal data, PI data that matches onto financial services, to use that automation to automatically label stuff so it gets the right sensitivity label, so it gets the right retention label, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of where it's come from and where we are today with it.
No, that's absolutely cool, Ryan. And for somebody that, I've dabbled. It's like anything, I suppose. If you're a techie and you work with Microsoft products, you kind of dabble in a lot of the different areas just to kind of get a bit of a feel for it. And certainly some of the concepts and the terminologies and the portals that you mentioned there. Yeah, I've certainly given a look around them. And I suppose it's like anything. It's having that experience working with real life customers to be able to actually put some of this into practice and conform to some of those industry standards and compliance. Now, predominantly, we're talking about data in terms of Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, kind of that I suppose unstructured data that's stored in file services such as OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, Exchange mailboxes. Now, predominantly, my understanding, I don't know if this has changed, Ryan, but the 365 compliance portal covers pretty much the Office 365 productivity suite.
Yep.
very, and Dynamics 365 undoubtedly as well, very comprehensively. I mean, in terms of what, how much bleed through, we know what Microsoft product sets are like. There's a lot of bleed through into the platform as a whole. Are you aware of any touch points where those services come into play within, say, the Azure platform, for argument's sake?
Actually, yeah, very much so. And recently, Azure Purview has just been released to GA. Now, within the Compliance Center, if you're building out a sensitivity label, you have the opportunity to apply that sensitivity label to a database within Azure Purview. So if you have a very sensitive SQL database, you can use that naming convention to apply not only to your Office apps or a SharePoint site or a Teams site or a Microsoft 365 group, you can now apply that within Azure Purview to a database. So it gives you that end-to-end structure wherever you have intellectual property or sensitive information types, whether it be in Azure, whether it be in Teams, whether it be in SharePoint, or whether it just be a single document like a Word document.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, it's cool to see that we're starting to see this proliferation, if you like, of those technologies. I mean, can we roll it back a little bit, in terms of, using the kind of techniques and the ways that the compliance and regulatory compliance feature sets work. So we talk about classification of records and we talk about labeling of records. Can you give us a basic understanding of what does that actually mean in real terms?
Absolutely. So within the client compliance portal, you have the information protection blade. Within there, that gives you opportunity to build sensitivity labels. So that is just a case of, I just want to apply a naming convention or a label taxonomy to a document. So if that is just a general document that you want to be able to share internally and externally and doesn't have any sensitive information in, that's where your general taxonomy would come in. You would apply that to that document, and that can be shared with anybody. Then you start to build out a more restrictive taxonomy where you have confidential, where perhaps you would have confidential internal, and you would have just people within your organization that can actually read that document once it's been labeled by somebody. Then on top of that, it's encrypted. So you'd run off to the RMS Azure Key Vault to get the key for you to be able to actually view that document. Now, if you don't have the permissions on that label itself, you don't get access to it. So it's encrypted and you're locked out if you don't have access to it.
But I presume all of that is done automatically, of course, completely seamless to the end user, I'm presuming there, right?
Well, you can do, but Microsoft have a terminology or a metaphor of crawl, walk, run. So initially, you would want to manual label. You would want to give the opportunity to your users or your employees of what type of data am I using? What type of data am I interacting with? Do I understand it? Therefore, can I apply the right label? Now, with automation, you can do that. Microsoft gives you the opportunity to do that, but that's more of a run, walk scenario. The run would be, you would apply an auto label, Johnny, but you would detect the sensitive information type, let's say a credit card, for example. That would come up as a policy tip inside of Outlook or Word and say, hey, I've just detected a credit card information inside of this document. Therefore, I'm going to recommend to you that you apply this label, and it would give you highly classified financial, for example. The opposite side of that would be it automatically detects it and just applies a label without the user even being knowledgeable of it. It just basically goes, I saw it, I'm going to apply this label to it. That is auto labeling client side. So that gives you the ability to do that from a client side perspective. We also have that from a service side perspective as well, where you can actually go through and understand your data landscape. Okay, so I know I want to look for financial services information in Exchange when emails being sent, OneDrive for data at rest, and also SharePoint for data at rest. You set up the auto labeling policy to go and look for that type of information. It crawls through all of your environment. It gives you a report back, and then you're able to understand at that point where all those financial documents or items are for you to be able to understand that data landscape, whether it's sensitivity data or financial data or PII data. It's entirely up to you what you want to search for. That is purely automation. That's purely machine learning in the background. You also have the ability to do that from a governance perspective as well. So if you find financial services information in this document, apply a information governance label to it.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, it is kept for a time-based period, and at the end of that, you could have a disposition review. And that disposition review allows you to, as an organization, to have a multi-stage disposition where you would say, if I, as a data owner, I'm happy for that data to be deleted, and then you'd have the, I don't know, department owner, let's say it's IT, you'd have your IT director that said, that's fine, we can delete that, right the way up to your risk and legal team. So they can assess it all the way through that journey before it's actually committed for deletion. So Microsoft offer you that now as a defensible disposal program, which is recent. It only came out this year. I think it was August, for a multi-stage disposition review. That makes the information governance more attractive and more easy to use, plus giving you the automation in the background.
No, that makes sense. No, I like the way that you're kind of describing this. It's kind of building up and building up. Am I right in thinking, though, that for some of those automation, those auto classification features, there's a licensing change requirement within 365?
Yeah, so all the good stuff, usual thing with Microsoft, is you would need an E5 if you want to do any automation stuff. So E3 comes with standard labeling, standard DLP. So you wouldn't get Teams DLP with that. So you can prevent sensitive information being shared within Teams chats and channels. You want to get endpoint DLP with that, where you could actually use the Windows 10 machine as a solution to protect your sensitive information. So take, for example, I was to copy a lot of credit card data out of a document and try and upload it onto Dropbox or Box or G Suite. It would prevent me from doing that. Or if I took that information out from a copy and paste perspective and tried to copy and paste it into another document or Notepad++, it would prevent me from doing that. So that's endpoint DLP. That's another E5 solution. Inside of risk management is an E5 solution that works off like machine learning in the background. And then records management, that is E5 as well, because that gives you a lot more to work with. And that's more focused at your regulatory environments anyway. So your record labels, your regulatory items. And more recently, adaptive scopes. So adaptive scopes gives you the ability to provide a scope to a policy from an information governance perspective. So you as a user, Johnny, you're working in the IT department in the UK, but then you go and move to Switzerland where the regulations are a lot more strict. It would follow you around as a user and then apply the right retention policies to you as a user without the admin having to do anything. That's all automation.
But I'm not, again, great. You're really helping me understand some of this terminology now, Ryan. I think, in terms of using these policies, these features, these rules that we can put in place to kind of cater for some of this, to meet these regulatory compliance requirements. I'm guessing that we could use some of these policies in ways that might suit business needs in terms of, again, from memory, did we have things like predefined rule sets, like you said, personally identifiable information, credit cards, NI numbers? They're almost there, aren't they, as kind of readily available regular expressions, so to speak, that we can apply in rule sets. Have you come across any other quirky ways that businesses or clever ways that businesses have used these tool sets to kind of do some things that you might, we all know, saving stuff going out, across wherever it might be external with, personally identifiable information. That is almost like one of the key things that businesses don't do. Equally things like credit card details, and PCI and things like that. Again, but have you come across any, more quirky, more innovative ways in which these kind of rule bases? I know I'm probably putting you on the spot a little bit here, but it's I'm right in thinking, aren't I, that it's a set of policies, classifications that you can apply to your data. And I just wondered if there were any kind of good insights or feedback that you had of what businesses are applying that to, and how can businesses start to maybe use some of this stuff outside of the scope of compliance, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you're referring to is sensitive information types, and they're under the data classification blade in the compliance center. So Microsoft to date, they have around 250, okay? And there will be regulations or items that reference PII. So from a geographical perspective, the EU, Americas, wherever you may be in the world. I'm sure Microsoft will have something to cover you from a PII perspective. But to answer your question there, you can actually create your own custom sensitive information types. So that then gives you the ability as an organization to adopt those sensitive information types for your own business needs. Now, when I was at Microsoft, I was working with a large car manufacturer. And what they was doing is they was using the custom sensitive information type to look for CAD drawings or to try and protect CAD drawings. So let's take, for example, you have a brand new motor car, okay? They've named it whatever, project, whatever they want to call it. And they want to basically look out for anybody communicating XYZ file extension, whether it be CAD or whatever the case may be. And then they build that into that custom sensitive information type. Then they would wrap that into a DLP policy to say, if you see this, or you see this sensitive type from a keyword perspective, so they see, let's call it project motor car, they'd see anybody talking about these terminologies, and they want to share, they're trying to share information outside, then block them. So you can use it from your own perspective. As long as you have the relevant regex or the keyword dictionaries to build into that sensitive information type, you can even wrap those into sensitivity labels as well. So you can say, I have a sensitivity label which is based on a project. Again, you can use automation to say, if you detect these words, automatically apply it. We want to protect this to the highest degree that we can. So just wrap a sensitivity label onto it and encrypt it. That way we know anybody that's accessing those documents will have the permissions to do so, and anybody that doesn't won't get access to it. That prevents that from being accidentally shared externally, for example, or even shared by someone who has a grievance with the business to share that document or that information outside to a competitor and say, here, this is what this manufacturer is making right now, and this is how they're doing it. It completely prevents you from doing that. So it's up to you as a business. If you've got the pre-context behind it, you can build it out as a sensitive information type. Absolutely.
I know, and it's really great to hear that, because I think sometimes, certainly from my position, and maybe my naivety to the whole area, because it's not a specialism of my own, but you look at that, and sometimes it's too easy to think, okay, that's configure and forget kind of technology, and it's absolutely not the case from my understanding in terms of, like you say there. I mean, typically, how do you see, the department structures? Again, being a really basic, naive person towards compliance and security and governance, what does that structure look like within business? Who takes care of, proactively, creating those sensitivity labels, looking to create those regular expressions that, I don't know, might match a certain contract number field or something like that within the business? How do you see that structure within the business? And I'm guessing this is a full-time role for, depending on the size of the business, for a person or a team of people.
Absolutely. So when I'm engaged on projects like this, from a consultancy perspective, the main people that you talk with are your compliance, risk, and legal teams. For them, they understand the technology. They don't understand the technology. They just understand the regulations in the background. Therefore, me as a technology person can come in and talk to those relevant teams to say, okay, what do you see as intellectual property from your industry or from your organization? Then how do you map in the regulations that you're under to the actual theoretical part of it? So that's your classification taxonomy. That will define what needs to be marked as what X sensitivity, okay, depending on the actual information or the data that's inside of the document. And then you've got your retention side of it, which is how long you need to keep data for. And so you're not hoarding data, you can still delete it. So from my perspective, more often than not, it's the data owners. So it could be your Exchange team, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, Power BI now, even Azure Purview now, your database guys. And then on top of that, you've just got your top tier table, which is your stakeholders, and then risk and legal. But more often than not, I spend most of my time with risk, legal. They are the ones that will say, here is the documentation that you need to follow. I would take that and then I'll adopt that into a technology or a configuration stance into 365 itself.
No, and that's cool to hear. And hopefully for people watching and the viewers watching this now, they'll get to understand, how these kind of things start to fit in together. Because I think it's like anything, isn't it? Microsoft products are so kind of well blended and melded together that you touch on certain areas, and before you know it, you're speaking about some of these kinds of things. And it's like you say, certainly for people that end users in business that may not necessarily be technical staff.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like you may speak to one consultant who's there to work on 365 and migrate the data into these specific areas, may not necessarily be the same person that knows the deep dive knowledge around the compliance. And it's just kind of trying to frame that right, isn't it, and getting that level of agreement and understanding. But that's absolutely brilliant. Thanks for that, Ryan. I mean, in terms of what you put together, I know you put together a bit of a Kickstarter guide around sort of information and protection and that data loss prevention. I mean, do you want to talk us through that and how that came to be a little bit, maybe?
Yeah, that came to be, it was quite random, really. So I had, when I was at Microsoft, I had this OneNote. And within this OneNote, I was kind of writing blogs for myself, for my own purpose, without even realizing it. And just randomly one day, one of my colleagues was asking for some help. So I shared my screen and I showed him a little snippet from my OneDrive. And he was like, mate, that's really, really good. You should share that around your colleagues. And it was pretty much what you've got in front of you there, without all the niceties and the structure of it. So I just had a bunch of links and then some information below them around what it was. Now, I originally did this so I could keep communicating whilst I was on a call with the customer. So whenever you're working for Fast Track, you have an hour per customer. I wanted to maximize that time, right? I wanted to give them the maximum value, what I could, during those 60 minutes. So I started to build this out, because most of my customers, when they're coming through, they'll come through this actual scenario of what I've got here from a MIP perspective. So I started putting it together. I shared it around a few colleagues. I got some amazing feedback. And before I knew it, like 30, 40 people around had it. And I was getting some good feedback, on Teams. People were reaching out to me saying, hey, can I have a copy of this? Do you mind if I share it with some, such and such a body? And then I just thought, what? I bet there would be a lot of people out there that would actually benefit from this. So I put it together. I made it more structured. I made it easy on the eye. But I put a bit of a blurb around it of how I'd actually come to this decision to actually share it. And I shared it on LinkedIn. And I think the last time I looked, it had like almost 10,000 views. People were sending me direct messages and saying, thanks very much. This has really helped. Now I understand it. There's some great tips in here and so on and so forth. So it's there for anybody really. Even if you're not just kickstarting, even if you're in the middle of a deployment and you want some tips and tricks, go and have a look at it. I've put everything I possibly could from a MIP perspective, from information protection, data loss prevention perspective into one document. Now, don't get me wrong, Microsoft Docs is incredible, but it can be a labyrinth of links. And it's very hard to find things at times, I'm sure anybody that works in Microsoft will say, perfect place to find some information, but it's just finding that information. So over time, I was just taking out all of these links and adding my own context to them of what they do, what I would find within that link, any important notifications within those links. And it just essentially ad hoc became a Kickstart guide. As you're scrolling,
I'm just scrolling through now, looking at the topic areas, and wow, you really are, like you say, you're delving into the nuts and bolts here. And like you say, I mean, I've done similar things, and I've got similar things, OneNote collections, where you just over the years you've kind of collected these arbitrary guides, and to do what you've done is phenomenal, and it's really helpful with, like you say, putting that back out into the community is such a brilliant thing to do, because I for one, I struggle at times with the whole compliance conversation. It's not my specialist area, but having a guide like this is certainly something. I mean, what we're looking at there, we've got about a 14-page Word document essentially, with you taking the time to put your own context around that to hopefully help the reader come to some kind of an understanding as to what this particular section is all about. Congratulations. I mean, it's really good, and I'm not surprised that people are asking for that. It's a brilliant thing to do. Thanks, Ryan. I think obviously we're going to put a link to that below, but I mean, it kind of, if I scroll back up to the top now, I mean, it's a really well structured document. I guess the message is go and take it a look. If you are, like you say, if you are doing anything with compliance governance at the minute, or you're halfway through a project, go and take a look and see what this has to offer you. But no, that's brilliant. I mean, in terms of doing that as a first pass, we mentioned it in the introduction, but I know, we've spoken before these recordings. We've spoken a couple of weeks back now,
Yeah.
and you're looking to turn yourself a little bit more towards community. And look, doing these kinds of things is absolutely an absolutely fantastic way of getting that out there.
Yeah.
Why is it that you're looking to do that, Ryan? What are you looking to do in terms of community at the moment?
Well, I just want to share my knowledge, to be perfectly honest with you, Johnny. I feel whenever I struggle with something from a compliance perspective, whether it be labeling or records management or whatever the case may be, you've got the usual people that you can turn to. Okay, you have your Steve Goodmans, you have your Joanne C. Kleins that you can go and look on their website to see if there's anything relevant. But because compliance is such a massive area and it differs from regulation and industry, there wasn't really anything out there that I could put my hands on to say, I'm going to use this or use this person as a complete guide. So for me, doing what I do and doing what I've done in the industries that I've done it in, especially in financial services, I thought, well, maybe I'm in a bit of a unique position. Maybe I should share my knowledge as I have done, and anybody can go to my website. Even yesterday, or a couple of weeks ago, I did a video for a financial services power summit, which is again out in the community. They were doing something around financial services when it come through the full stack. This is the one, here.
Yeah.
And this was, I had 30 minutes to do it. And they was like, can you do anything in 30 minutes? I was like, yeah, I'll just give my 5 top ways. M365 can help you with Deck 17A. And I just went through those top 5 configurations within the solutions. I got it out there. It was well received. And I just thought, I want to go this through to a wider scope now. So I connected in with some user groups up here in the north. And I just want to take it that next bit further. If anybody's looking to collaborate from a security perspective, let's say, if there's any MVPs out there that work just in security or just in Azure, and they want to, collaborate with me on a compliance perspective, that's what I want to do. I want to broaden it. It's not just compliance. Compliance, as you previously said, it goes over into other technologies, security, Azure, and just getting my bit out there, if you like, mate. Just sharing my knowledge. And I'm sure there's somebody else out there that would be in a similar position to me that have very similar stories that I can share with and come together and say, okay, well, I did it this way. And your man said, well, I did it this way. And it was like, okay, I see why you did that. Just getting out there, really, Johnny, is pretty much what I want to do.
Oh, and this is a fantastic way of doing it. At the end of the day, I know you're relatively early on your journey. I mean, one of the things that I've spoken to so many guests and a lot of the interaction I have, Twitter seems to be an awesome place for tech communities at the moment. So, and undoubtedly we're going to see you pull through into Twitter and start getting a bit more involved on that side of things. But it's a really cool place to be. You're right. I think in terms of reaching out to other technical counterparts in slightly different areas and trying to offer those collaborations is absolutely key to it. And I guess doing those collaborations and documenting them, putting those back out there, I suppose sharing your workings, sharing your learnings from those things is an awesome place to be. So, I mean, how's it going at the moment? I know you said you've done a few talks now. You did the one only last night. Are you kind of putting a call out there now to try and get onto some additional user groups? What are you thinking at the moment then?
Yeah, I am. So I'm very active on LinkedIn, just looking for user groups. I see them being shared a lot. I see there's a couple of festive ones coming up before the Christmas period. So I put my name in the hat for a speaker there. And I will always say, I don't just want to do compliance intros on what compliance is. I can go deep dive into records management, information governance, MCAS when it comes to information protection, So looking around LinkedIn, connecting with people like yourself, seeing what you're up to, what community channels you're involved in, even other MVPs that I've connected with on LinkedIn. Hey, what you up to? Do you have any good channels that I can join, and so on and so forth? Yeah. And just going down that route, really. And if there's anybody out there that has an opportunity, just give me a shout. Go on my website or follow me on Twitter. I'm more than happy to give my time to share my knowledge.
I think you'll find yourself inundated before you know it, to be honest, with this kind of knowledge, Ryan. I think, it's definitely one of those areas, like you say, that, to have somebody that's got the experience and the level of knowledge that you've obviously gained over the years now doing this kind of work is, you you don't generally get too many people turning to the community with, that kind of deep knowledge in those areas. So I mean, it's cool that you're willing to partake and give back. But look, I know you've recently started a new position. So firstly, congratulations on that one. I mean, obviously, do you want to tell us a little bit about that new role? And
yeah, absolutely. So it's been a real pleasure actually dealing with integration with Epic. So I was currently working for Microsoft, and I absolutely loved it there. I really, really did. And I never saw myself leaving that contract role. So I came from a permanent role into a contract role with Microsoft just to extend my compliance knowledge. I said I would never go back into contracting after being there for 17 years, but I made the leap. And you know what? I loved every minute of it. The team I was in, the Fast Track Academy, everybody that's involved in Fast Track, if you ever get an opportunity, to anybody that's watching, go and join. The people there are amazing. And the actual knowledge that you take on from others is incredible. It's overwhelming. It's like drinking from a fire hose, as they say. It's always too much. You've got to basically break it down. But long story short, right before the pandemic, I interviewed with Epic, and it was going really well. And then the pandemic hit, and they withdrew the role because the world at the time was just trying to figure out what is this? Where do we go with this? We just went into lockdown, so the role was put on hold, unfortunately. So then I joined Microsoft, and lo and behold, Epic shared a job role for a project manager. And I thought, oh, actually, my cousin would be an ideal fit for that. He applied for the role and got the role. And while he was there, he realized that Epic were still looking for a good compliance guy. And he was like, are you sure you don't want to have a conversation again? I was like, well, I'll have a conversation. It doesn't really hurt, but I do want to stay here at Microsoft. And then I spoke to Epic, and they just ticked every box that I was looking for, Johnny.
Yeah.
Like career path, career integration into other areas like security and so on and so forth. Even from a certification perspective, they was like, if you want to do any certificates, whether they're Microsoft or regulatory certifications or industry certifications, like data privacy law and so on and so forth, we'll totally back you. We'll give you that opportunity. And I was like, well, I'm actually trying to build a personal brand at the moment. And they said, well, we'll encourage you to do that. We'll give you the influence to do that. We'll help you grow your brand. Microsoft often give us the opportunity to come and speak with them at events. Would you want to do that? And I was like, yes, certainly I would. I want to share my knowledge. So I had over a period of time, probably 7 or 8 conversations, all the way up to the VP of Client Services, because I wanted to know everything that I could about Epic and how it would integrate into my life, and what a benefit I would be to them and what benefit they would be to my career. And I just thought, this is a place where I could go to and retire, because they're actually giving me everything I want. And it was only at that point I thought, do you know what? Maybe I will leave Microsoft. Maybe I will go to Epic, because I really like what they're talking about. And they described some of the customers that they had. They clearly couldn't give the name away. But I looked at the projects that they had as they were talking through them, and I thought, do you know what? This would be amazing for me to go into. This is exactly where I'm going to go. Deep dive. Big, messy environments, big, messy banks, big, messy private investment companies, asset companies that are taking that journey. Some of them haven't even gone to 365 yet. So I get the opportunity to do everything from end to end, the full thing end to end. And I just thought, do you know what? I'm going to go for it. I'm going to say yes. And because I said yes, they was like, okay, well, we're going to give you the lead on this. And that elevated me somewhat, and I was like, this is incredible. This really is an opportunity that I can't say no to. So I moved over, and don't forget me wrong, Microsoft's an incredible place to go to, but I just felt at that time it was such a leap up onto moving to Epic.
Yeah.
I made the choice, and I thought that this is the one for me. So here I am, and I'm absolutely loving it.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's great to see that, at the end of the day, all the things that you described there, and for any, prospective employers watching these kind of videos, very much we've seen this shift, certainly over the pandemic. And, we're hearing things like the Great Resignation at the moment. But I think people are starting to see now that actually, picking it's not just about employers picking the skills and caliber of people. It's very much turned the table slightly and somewhat, in which you are actually joining the company. That company has got to be a right fit for you, your lifestyle, what your needs are, and it's such a great thing that you've managed to find that, and it's great to hear you kind of demonstrate that you've been through that process with them. And yeah, best of luck, congratulations first and foremost, Ryan, obviously, and best of luck. And I'm sure it's going to work out really well. But no, fantastic. Except look, Ryan, this has been such an intriguing, really enlightening, great conversation, certainly helping me personally out, and undoubtedly everybody that's watching this video with, trying to put those bits of the jigsaw together with compliance and, governance things across cloud services. So look, before we wrap this up, there's always a question I like to talk around. And I know you mentioned a little bit earlier on about where you think things are going, but maybe not just in the space of compliance and governance around things, but where do you see technology taking us into the future, into the next 5 to 10 years, in terms of what you're seeing today? How do you think that the area of your viewpoint in the industry is going to evolve? What kind of things should we be looking out for, do you think?
So I think AI is a big thing at the moment. Okay, I think that goes without saying, especially in massive industries. It helps them a lot. AI, machine learning, but that comes with additional step, right? Where it comes from a regulatory perspective to actually regulate that machine learning and that AI. So I think over the next 5 years, more AI, more regulations, some more compliance for me. So I'm happy about that. I'd probably say, I can't really think of anything off the top of my head apart from that, really, because that's really an industry that really an area where I've started to look into to cover myself over the next 5 years, and not just concentrate on M365 compliance, but M365 AI compliance if it gets there, or the regulatory aspect of fintech services within AI. So hopefully it goes that way, and because I'm trying to go that way with the trend of it, you see.
It's funny, Ryan. I should probably label that section, or this section of the show, everybody's going to AI, because I joke with you, watch back through the last few episodes. Well, I say probably the last dozen or so episodes, and it seems to be, it doesn't really matter what tech sort of disciplines you've got, everybody's seeing the same thing. AI is on the rise, that machine learning element of AI, and being able to automate things and make use of AI models to make appropriate decisions. And absolutely, why wouldn't that be any different in the regulation of data and the governance of data? So no, it's great to see. Ryan, before we wrap up, any last parting thoughts? Anything else you want to get out there before we bring this to an end?
Just give me a follow on LinkedIn, follow me on Twitter, and like I say, if there's other MVPs out there that want to get in touch, that want to collaborate over that compliance, security, Azure space, then give me a shout. I'm more than happy to jump on a session and share my knowledge and get it out there for the people that need it.
No, perfect. And that's the call to action. So watch your inbox will fill up before long with the quality of this stuff that you're sharing now. But Ryan, I think we'll bring it to an end there. Thanks for being such an awesome guest. Really appreciate you giving up your time today.
My pleasure, Johnny. It's always a pleasure speaking to you. Thanks very much for giving me the opportunity.
No, absolutely, anytime, buddy. And no doubt we'll make a point and we'll have a catch up in a few months' time, see how things are going anyway. But until then, thanks so much for being a great guest, and we'll catch up very soon.
All right, thanks, Johnny. You're welcome. See you for now.
Cheers, Ryan. Bye now.
Bye-bye.